Ray Leonard, who was aboard HMAS Armidale when she was sunk off Timor on the 1st of December 1942, and he witnessed an act of bravery that is the stuff of legend, which I'm sure you will refer to this afternoon. Welcome, Ray. Well, Ray, thank you for waiting patiently. As I mentioned, Ray was on board the HMAS Armidale when she was sunk off Timor in December 1942. Armidale was a small corvette and had been supplying Australian commandos on Timor who were fighting a successful war against Japanese occupation forces. And Ray personally witnessed the making of a legend, which we would love to hear about. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Tracy. I served in 3 ships during the war, a destroyer and 2 corvettes. I can only wish to speak about one today. The first ship, HMAS Armidale. I had many shipmates during my 4 years in the Navy. I can't speak about them all, but I would like to speak about one. So the focus of my talk to you is really largely about him. Just to give a background though, I couldn't wait to turn 18 to join the Navy. And I did. And before long I was training at Flinders Naval Depot. And after that, accepted to do a submarine detection course at HMAS Rushcutter in Sydney. With that 6 months training, I was ready to step into a ship. It was all theory up to this point. Now came the real war. During my training of 6 months, a corvette was being built at a Balmain in Sydney at Mortstock, and the completion of that construction coincided with my training. So it was really stepping from the depot straight into a brand new warship. During this time, the man about whom I wish to talk, whose name comes up so often nowadays in the press and elsewhere. He had done his training elsewhere, but he also was ready to step onto this same ship. Like so many others, we had a very young crew, many of us 18 years of age. Ordinary seaman Teddy Sheehan, the name of this man, was also 18, but younger. Indeed, he was the youngest man and the most junior man on the ship. I mention this because it's very relevant in the story later on. We served around the New Guinea waters for some months as an escort vessel when we found ourselves in Townsville one day, and our commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander David Richards, a very respected commanding officer, stood before the naval officer in charge of this area, along with the commanding officer of another ship. And the 2 captains were told one of them had to take his ship and do it quickly and get to Darwin, where the war was rather more pressing at the time than elsewhere. He said he didn't know how to make the decision on which ship. So he said, let's toss a coin. And he did. He tossed a coin, and now, to mix up my metaphors a little, Armidale drew the short straw. So off we went to Darwin. Getting there, we were rather shocked to see Darwin a shambles. The town pretty well destroyed, the docks in the same mess, and ships sunk. But we were here for one particular reason, and our mission was to be just this: to take on board some soldiers, 60 indeed, and take them over to Timor, not that far away, land them safely, because a small group of Australian soldiers were finding it difficult to survive even in Timor. The Japanese by this time actually had thousands of men on that island. It was important that we accomplish this mission covertly, so very little was spoken about it at all. And off we went one particular day, later in the day, hoping that indeed we could get over to Timor, certainly within a couple of days, in the darkness, accomplish our mission and back again. It wasn't to be so. Luck this time was not with us. I would speak about this concept of luck if I had the time, but I haven't today. But I perhaps can say that when I was a youngster, an 18-year-old, it occurred to me that luck played a very important role in our life. Luck indeed had decided with the toss of that coin that we were going to Darwin. Our luck was against us when shortly after leaving Darwin, we were observed by a Japanese reconnaissance plane. And then we immediately knew that what was to be a covert operation was now conspicuously overt. And it wasn't long before, predictably, the first bombers came over. Only a few of them. They dropped bombs ineffectively. We were not affected at all, partly because of the ability of our Oerlikon gunners to keep the planes high in the sky, and partly because of the skill of our captain watching the fall of bombs, manoeuvring his ship very cleverly. Perhaps one other thing may have helped us a bit. Ah yes, it was luck too. We got through, but we knew there would be more bombers coming. Indeed, a few hours later they did. I won't repeat this episode. It's going to happen a few times. Each time we came out of it unscathed. For the three reasons I've just given, I think. The gunners, the captain, and luck. The problem was that we were changing course so often with these skirmishes with the Japanese that it delayed our arrival at this particular cove in Timor, where we were due to arrive at midnight. We were 2 hours late in arriving, and we got no response to our signal in the darkness. We were a little bit anxious, afraid, I suppose we can say, because we didn't know whether our soldier mates there in Timor were even alive at that point. We had no option but to quickly get out of there as quickly as we could, because it was a dangerous spot. We had evidence of this right next to us at the time. And sadly, one of our destroyers, the Voyager, attempting to accomplish a mission in which we were engaged, had very tragically run aground and was a write-off. We were aware of this. We pulled out further to sea before the Japanese reconnaissance planes came along the edge of Timor, and we contacted the responsible people back in Darwin asking for advice, indeed for direction, and it came through unambiguously, crystal clear, something like this: this mission must be accomplished. Go back and complete the job tonight. Well, that we had to do. Orders were orders. I didn't think about it at that time, but later on I got to reading about the importance of following orders in the Navy. And my reading took me back 300 years to Admiral Byng, in charge of a Royal Navy fleet near Majorca. Admiral Byng was court-martialed and put to death, not because he lost that battle, but because he didn't follow orders closely. Maybe our captain had this in mind too, because he turned around and we headed back. But there was a problem. There were many hours of daylight ahead of us. How were we going to pass the time before pulling in there in the darkness? It didn't seem likely that we'd be able to do it. It really didn't. And for the first time, a more aggressive Japanese attack came towards us. These planes, I imagine, were told not to fail like all the previous ones. And they tried very hard with the same result. Was it luck again or what? But bombs were falling around us, but we were not hit. And this extraordinary run of, what will we call it, luck, couldn't last forever. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 1500 hours in Navy time, they arrived. There were 13 of them, and they skirted the horizon out of our range of our guns for a little while, presumably working out a plan of attack. And then they turned and came in. Some of their more experienced personnel were quickly able to identify them. One flight plane that flew around as an observation plane, I guess. 3 Japanese Zero fighters. And at that time in the war, we're talking about 1942, the Zero was probably one of the best fighter planes in the war. And indeed it was for some time later. There were also 9 torpedo bombers, presumably well stocked up with torpedoes and bombs. So they turned and they came, this time straight at us, and we knew there's something very different about this attack. For those of us standing on the bridge, and it included me that was my action station, we had a perfect view of what was coming, and quite candidly, it was quite frightening. The Zeros came first, diving from a height to a low level and with their guns blazing. Let me say that so are our own guns blazing. I imagine that certain people in exposed positions on the ship were either hit or wounded at that point. Then came the bombers, 3 lots of 3, but spread out in such a fashion, coming in from different directions, that all the skill in the world wouldn't have helped our skipper to avoid this attack. A torpedo hit us just forward of midships with one very, very loud explosion, which seemed to me to lift the ship a little up and then deposit her back in the same position. But she commenced to list markedly to port and go down by the forward. And the captain immediately ordered abandon ship. Before doing that, there were certain things that the crew had to do for which some of us had been prepared. One of them was to launch the motorboat, and that was launched from the port side, where indeed the torpedo hit. That gave some problem in getting that boat away, but it got away. Over on the starboard side, a few of us had to launch the whaler. That was our job, and we failed in our attempt. No matter how hard we strove, we couldn't budge it from the davits. And some wise old birds amongst us said, "She's stuck, she'll never move." The thought at the time was, if this doesn't glamorise the situation too much, the ship had a broken back. Well, I'm not quite sure about that, but I am sure that it was thrown out of quilter and we'd never get that whale out.
Ray, how quickly was all of this happening?
Minutes.
Minutes?
Minutes. Minutes, very quickly. With the order to abandon ship, everybody capable of doing so went about doing that, except one man. And now I reintroduce our mate, our shipmate, Teddy Sheehan. He left the Oerlikon gun, which was just aft of midships, and made for the port side as if to jump overboard, as everybody else was now doing. But he paused and looked ahead at his friends in the water who were struggling. And these Zeros about which I mentioned hadn't gone away. They had returned for the next strafing attack. Well, Teddy then did a remarkable thing. That was his vision. He saw it, he turned around, and he went back to his gun. He couldn't have gone back walking smoothly because the list to port was now marked. So it must have been a great struggle for him. I didn't see this. I had left the ship on the starboard side. For a while, that seemed to be the place to be because close into the ship's side, we were getting protection from the strafing of the Japs. But then somebody mentioned the words getting sucked under, and that moved us all quickly. That thought was a bit too frightening, so we headed off to swim. I come back again to the port side to tell you that when Teddy went back to his gun, he commenced firing it. He was the only man on the ship at this stage able to fire a gun, and he did it and kept on doing it. And as so many people in the water on that side of the ship could see, he was at his gun when the ship sank. Back on the starboard side, I had swum some distance flat out, stopped, turned around, only to see the last bit of the stern of Armadale go under. It was sunk. And that was quite a sad sight, losing a ship which was also our home, and more than that, losing, as I knew even then, many of our shipmates. Now I could go on and tell you about what happened on the raft and elsewhere, but I'm not sure. I might be exceeding my time.
Yes, you are.
Stop.
Ray, yeah, no doubt the the hours and days that followed where you've left off your story are compelling as well. But I do wonder on how many occasions in all the days of your life since that day you've thought about Teddy Sheehan and your other mates.
Well, it would be coming straight out of Hollywood if I said every day. That would be an exaggeration. But it is true that he is figured in my life over all these years that have passed. We've had many reunions and discussed about him. If I can just say, aside for a moment, those of us who finished up in the whaler, which got thrust up to the surface after the ship sank, and were in it and attempting to row back to Darwin. It was a very, very difficult thing with 29 men crammed into such a tight space. It was hard to row. It was hard to lie at the bottom of the boat to get away from the oars of the rower. But at night time, we stopped rowing. And it was then, in the quietness of the night that we thought and spoke about a number of things. Food and water, because we were being deprived of both as the days passed. Our family, certainly, but Teddy Sheehan, we spoke of in wonderment. We simply could not understand his motivation, what was going on in his mind when he went back to certain death. And if that answered your question to some extent, that is an enduring thought.
Very eloquently, and thank you, Ray.